I am so excited to welcome you to my podcast, Secrets of Success with Dr. Shane Needham. That's me, where our theme is never be outworked. And we've talked about lots of different things. We've talked about science and mass spectrometry and chromatography and getting that voice of science to the global community. We're going to talk a lot about science today too, because weight training and strength training and conditioning is science. I have the pleasure and the honor to introduce Travis Seltenreich. He is a strength and conditioning coach. We're going to talk about his passion to train youth and the journey of entrepreneurship. He's recently become a full-time strength trainer, left a really, really good position to become an entrepreneur. I've watched him in this journey the last several years. He was my powerlifting coach and my strength coach for a while as well, and I consider him a great friend. So again, welcome to Secrets of Success with Dr. Shane Needham, where we're in my podcast studio in Moscow, Idaho. We are looking out the window right now on a beautiful day in the Palouse in Moscow, Idaho, where we can see Moscow Mountain. We can see the rolling hills of Moscow and the rolling wheat fields, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful day. I'm very honored and just very grateful to be here. Again, you're on the Secrets of Success podcast with Dr. Shane Needham, where our theme is never be outworked. Follow me on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. Visit my website at drsneedham.com. I'm going to stream this banner across the screen where it shows not only you can call in and ask questions, and if we take your call, I'm going to mute you right away because we're probably in the middle of a conversation, but I'll see that you called and we will get to you. So don't hang up. Okay. So visit my website. You can also see my YouTube channel, and you can see all the previous podcasts on my YouTube channel, on Spotify, on iTunes, on SoundCloud. And we are going to be talking today about strength and conditioning, but also the journey of entrepreneurship, and also, of course, our theme of never be outworked. And so what we really want to focus on today is listening to, what Travis has to say about training youth and training kids. And we hear a lot of old wise tales about training youth, and I think he's going to debunk a lot of them. And so he loves science, actually. He loves to read white papers and to read the science behind strength training and conditioning and nutrition and all of that. And right now he's very, very passionate about training youth. And I know him and I both have had these conversations that we got hooked when we were teenagers and lifting. And it's lifting and strength training is going to be something I do until the day I die. And I hope I die in a gym, actually.
Yeah.
And so Travis, welcome to my podcast. Thank you very much for coming online. And I just want you to introduce yourself. Tell your story. Be as personal as you like. I know you've been an athlete. You've strength trained for a long time. You've also had struggles. I want you to be vulnerable with those kind of things. And you've been a part-time trainer and strength training coach, and then you left a really good job, and now you're a full-time entrepreneur and strength training coach. Tell us about that whole story.
Yeah, for sure. Just start off, thanks Shane for having me on the podcast. Being on a podcast has always been a goal of mine, so this is number one, hopefully first one of many.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So it goes back a long ways. Both of my parents were very active. My dad was a competitive bodybuilder. My mom, she was a very successful high school athlete. And so when they were older, they would go to the gym a lot, and they just bring my sister and myself
Awesome.
with them. And we weren't allowed to go on the weight room floor. They had a specific age restriction. So we just sat on the couches and just peered in and just watched all the people walk by and lift weights. And I always wanted to go mess around on the weight room floor, but we weren't allowed to. We were too young. And then my dad had a weight room and stuff, some bench press and whatnot set up in our basement. And so I'd go down and help spot him, and he'd kind of show me a little bit. And my sister and I would have bench press competitions. She was always stronger than me because she was older than me. But once I hit 12, that was the end of that. But yeah. And so like after that, I got to high school, and I did a little bit of weights and stuff in middle school. I was in football since 6th grade. I was an active kid. I was outside. My parents never bought a video game console for us. The first one I wanted, I had to pay for myself. And it was, if you want to play, go play outside. So we were outside a lot.
That's awesome. Travis, I also, in this house,
yeah,
there are no video game consoles. Not allowed.
Yeah, I had one, but I resurfaced a shed and did the roof and shingles and everything to save up my own money for that thing. Blood, sweat, and tears went into that. But that's a whole other story. But anyway, so yeah, really active growing up. Just loved playing football, played a little bit of basketball here and there. And then I got into high school. But before I got to high school, my and this is a little more vulnerable. My parents went through a divorce. I was about 9 years old, and my dad kind of left the picture. He moved away and walked out, and so I kind of had a little bit of animosity towards resistance training and strength training, and so
because that was kind of his thing.
It's his thing,
Yeah.
and and he left, and like I didn't know the whole story. I was a kid.
Of course you did.
It takes two to tango.
Absolutely.
But it was just, I was like, well, okay, he walked out, left us. I really don't want much to do with that.
Yeah.
And so I did my sports, but through like the first in high school, we had high school weights. It was, I'll get into high school weights a little bit later, but I gained a lot of weight. I think I was never diagnosed, but I think I had a little bit of minor depression. I just started eating.
Sure.
And I still played football, and I just like, well, if I get bigger and get heavier, I can be good at football. And so, and that wasn't,
that's a whole nother conversation,
exactly.
isn't it?
Yeah. And so, I gained a lot of weight. I ended up hitting about 280 pounds by the time my senior year hit. And I still didn't, I weight trained. I had a solid bench, solid squat in high school, but it's just what I felt like that's what we need to do for football. That's it. I did the bare minimum to get through. I did well in football, but I gained a lot of weight and I was not happy. Knees ached. It's just depression was in, and I relied on food. And eventually, I remember looking at a school. It was right when I graduated high school. I looked at a picture at graduation, and I've shared it several times. And I was like, seriously, that's what you look like.
Yeah.
Like, that is not okay. And I walked my butt up to the gym that I sat in when I was a kid and watched and talked to the gym owner that I've known, Silver Valley Fitness. Shout out to them. I've known Tom and Tammy since I was probably 6 years old.
So where's that at?
That's in Kellogg. So
it is Kellogg,
where
Idaho.
I grew up in Kellogg, Idaho. Yeah, uptown Kellogg. And walked up there, and I just started moving. It wasn't specific. I mean, I knew a little bit what I've learned through high school, what my parents taught me, which I'm thankful of. I believe I had good form. The gym owner told me I had good form, so I was going with it.
Yeah.
And I just began to just change and transform my life. Essentially, my physique changed. I lost a lot of weight. Like I said, I was 285. I dropped down to probably 210, 215. And during that time, it was right after high school, I was going to North Idaho College, and I was majoring in history. And so I was working on my associate's degree in history. And then it came time to transfer to U of I. And I was like, man, I really love health and fitness. And
so you transferred from North Idaho College in Coeur d'Alene to University of Idaho in Moscow, Idaho.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And I was like, well, history is kind of cool, but I really like health and fitness more. And, and so I changed my major to exercise science and health, and transferred to U of I, finished that degree, got a certification in personal training, and then started working at the local gym here in Moscow, North Idaho Athletic Club. And that was, 7 years ago. And trained there, still kind of. I competed in powerlifting, coached a couple of clients, helped them prep for powerlifting meets, and that did that a little bit. It was great to do while I was going to school because I can make my own schedule.
Sure.
And and then did that, and then kind of after that, I mean, that's kind of how it all started, really. And then it goes on to a whole other chapter, really.
Well, that's great. I want to tell the listeners and viewers out there. So you have a common story in that you reflected on your life and you looked at a picture that you were not happy with, and you obviously looked overweight to yourself, and you just weren't happy with that. So I just want to let all of our viewers, I'm going to be posting about this. I'm going to have 3 or 4 people on, including somebody that specializes as a PhD in psychology with eating disorders, and obesity is an eating disorder. And Travis actually said it very well. It was probably maybe something to do with his parents' divorce, maybe the abandonment. Usually almost all disorders, almost all pain comes from abandonment and rejection. And he felt that his dad has abandoned him and probably turned off from weightlifting. And instead of taking drugs and alcohol, you ate.
Yep.
Very common. Now, what's not common, so we're going to have at least 2 females that have struggled with eating disorders on my podcast the next couple of months, and 1 male, and they all overcame it. And then we're going to have a PhD in psychology talk about what we can do as parents to make sure that we have healthy eating habits and how to deal with body image issues and so on and so forth. And so Tell me what's not where your mindset was different, Travis, is you looked at yourself and you said, I want to change.
Right.
Over 70% of the people will look at themselves and say, screw it. This is how I'm going to be.
Yeah.
So they have a fixed mindset. You had a growth mindset and you made that change right away.
Right.
So really, really good job and kudos to you. And we're going to be talking about that over the next, because I think it's a very, very healthy and necessary conversation to have, because this is not, this is not an uncommon struggle that people have, is with eating disorders and body image issues and so on and so forth. And so you didn't like what you saw. We're also going to talk about that too. What should you see in the mirror and what is healthy? Because you do have to understand what is a healthy weight.
Yes. Yep.
What is a healthy look? And obesity is not a healthy look.
No.
And so we hear it wrongly is that, well, you have to love yourself. Well, yes, but you have to know what healthy is too.
Right.
And you understood that. And so, and you look great, by the way. And I your strength training is going really well. I'm following him on social media and it's going really, really well. And you have a great story. So tell the viewers how we met. Do you remember that? I think I remember, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. So when I was actually going to U of I, we had to do little practicals for school.
Yes.
And I was like, well, I'm gonna go hit up the local gym. I wanted to start branching out, and I ran into a trainer you're working with, Vince.
That's right.
And I was talking to Vince, like, hey man, can I shadow you? And like, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm interested in. I like bodybuilding. I told him my past. He's like, I got a perfect guy for you to shadow. And it happened to be Shane.
That's right. I forgot about that part.
Yeah. And so I shadowed Shane probably 3 times, maybe. I was kind of trying to bounce through several different clients so I can see everything. And we talked a little bit. I knew a little bit about you. I knew the effect you had on the community with wrestling. And just how great you did with that, and then I kind of saw you here and there throughout the gym. Yeah, that's pretty much
That's cool. And then he actually, I wanted to do a powerlifting competition, and so about 2 years ago, I hired him as a powerlifting coach. And I said, hey, I want to do this. Here's what my goals are, and we trained for about a year, and we exceeded all of our goals. We broke all the state records that I wanted and so on and so forth. And it was a great journey, and you just did a great job. And, I remember something that you said to me, Travis, when I really started lifting heavy, and I didn't really lift heavy until I started lifting with Travis. And now there's as a power lifter, especially as you age, you're always this close to getting injured. We had to really work around that. And he was very good and flexible about saying, okay, we need to back off here and do this. And I had to be really good about telling him how I felt, and so, cause I just couldn't train heavy every body part every week. Couldn't do it. My body was actually breaking down. I wasn't recovering. So we figured all that out. And, but I remember you saying about Ronnie Coleman, one of the best and biggest bodybuilders of all time, 8-time Mr. Olympia. And he pushed around a lot of weights. And he's definitely probably the biggest Mr. Olympia ever. Definitely. Definitely.
I'd say so.
And he said, and this is what Travis said to me, and I'll never forget this. He says, one thing Ronnie Coleman said is he said he never really got big until he started lifting lots of weight, heavy weight. And I found the same thing. Like I have more muscle mass than I've ever had. And a lot of that has to do with your training. And so I've been training that way for like 2 years now. And I just keep slowly gaining more and more muscle mass. And I'm going to be 50 in November. And so I have more lean body mass than I've ever had.
That's awesome.
And I'm pushing more weight than I've ever. Will I do a powerlifting competition again? I remember how close we were to possibly hurting myself. And I love lifting so much that, I don't want to not ever do it. So who knows? But
it's a long, long journey. A life of powerlifting it's rewarding, but you can ask a handful of them that have been doing it for years and ask them how many hip replacements they've had. And it's you got to weigh your pros and cons.
You do. And you have to, where do you want to be and what are your goals? And we're going to talk about weightlifting and how, anything done to an extreme in life can be harmful. Anything. Okay. But that's why I'm transitioning back to bodybuilding, because you use less weight, more repetitions. It's more about recovery and eating and so on and so forth. And so, but I'm still pushing lots of weight, but never to the point where I might hurt myself. Because whenever somebody says this is going to be a record, I'm going to go for it. It might hurt myself. So tell us about And so I really appreciate that journey and
Yeah.
just, and you even just from, I haven't trained with you for like a year now,
Yeah.
but even all of the history that I had with you has really helped me. And I appreciate that. So thank you. So why'd you want to be a strength and conditioning coach? What made you want to really, to do that? So you're a history major and it's like, okay, I want to be a strength and conditioning coach. Why?
Because, well, let's see here. So like I fell in love with like the health and fitness. And so I was like, I could be a personal trainer, and then like when I was going to U of I learned about CSCS, Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist or Strength and Conditioning Coach. And I was like, what's this all about? And those individuals, they focus on strength training, which I love, but they also focus on the performance aspect in sport. They help athletes improve their performance at sport. And I was like, man, that sounds pretty interesting. And I'm really into downhill mountain biking. And so I was like, well, this performance knowledge is going to help. And so I started working on it when I was at U of I, and then life happened. I got distracted. And then like a year ago, I picked it back up and just decided to finish out and get the certification. I wanted to learn how to apply performance. I wanted to go to that next level and get that next level. I mean, like personal trainers, it's awesome. It's great, but I just wanted to push the envelope a little bit further.
So so my brother is my twin brother. He's actually a fairly competitive downhill mountain biker as well. And when he got into the biking community, because he also did cross country races, and I don't know all the terms, so I don't want to get him wrong, but he did some, road biking as well and everything. And those guys are, when he first got into it, he's he doesn't train like me, so he's not as much muscle mass as me,
right,
but he's still a mesomorph. I mean, he's still a mesomorph where he's stocky and can build muscle, right? And we've always been lifting, and all the bikers were telling him, "Oh, stop lifting. You get too big, you get too muscular." And what do you say about that? And tell me about that community and communities of athletes that still say that.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you say about that? And then how did it affect your performance in downhill mountain biking?
Yeah. So I'll start by saying that that's completely false. Strength training is so important for endurance exercises. There is research after research articles. It's all out there. Like if you are interested in it, just Google search the effects of strength training on endurance-based activity. It prevents injury, it improves recovery time, it increases power output, which in turn increases your performance at the sport.
Yeah.
The only thing where I think it may be a slight issue is for really competitive people is you got to find your rest point. You got to find that balance. So it's like, you shouldn't do a strength training session, hard strength leg day, and then go race your enduro race the day after.
Of course.
And so that's like
so you have to have a priority, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
It's like, your priority is the sport and be better at the sport.
Exactly.
But do you want to be better at it? Do you want to recover? And especially when it comes to long mountain bike races, do you want to suck a little less?
Right.
It's going to be difficult regardless. But, if you're recovering and you don't have to put as much of an effort as if anyone else was, it's like, okay, you're recovering faster. You feel better because you didn't just give 110% on your last course. You're like,
right.
I still kicked everyone's butt, and now it's about 75%.
Right. Yeah. And so did you find that it really helped your performance as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Interesting.
Absolutely. Front squats, man. That is like one of the best exercises for mountain bike. It works your upper back and your leg and your quads.
Interesting.
And it's just like,
well, my brother was telling me some of these stories. I'm sure you have some too. And I don't know if they were downhill mountain bikers. Well, as you know, most bikers are, you're probably a mesomorph too. You're not necessarily tall and lanky.
Yeah.
You're not a basketball player type, right? Okay. And so you're built a lot like me. And so, whereas a lot of good mountain bikers, they're just tall and lanky, really tall and lanky.
Yep.
So they have long limbs and so on and so forth. But you're talking 6'2", 150, right?
Yeah, soaking wet.
Right, exactly.
With gear.
I think he's even told me about some 6'3" guys that are 135, and they're really worried about the scale. Yeah. They're worried about weighing too much and it's going to slow them down. So he has these crazy stories that are truthful. Mm-hmm. These are like regional people, right? And they're like nationally ranked. And so they're really tall, really lanky. They don't eat well because they're afraid they're going to gain weight, right? Oh. So they don't really know the proper protein nutrition and so on and so forth. And they don't strength train. So he knows these 22 and 23-year-olds that actually have back issues, hip issues, or when they actually wreck on a mountain bike, they break hips. Whereas he's had many wrecks, probably more than you should, but it's just part of downhill mountain biking.
Right.
And he says he absolutely thinks that it's his muscle mass and his strength training that not only makes his muscle stronger, but also his bones. And so, yeah, these guys have all kinds of issues with that. And I guess even a lot of those like Tour de France guys, when they're going super fast, but when they wreck because there's no muscle mass on them, they don't really strength train, they just break in pieces.
It's like made out of glass.
Right. And so yeah, people that don't think strength training is good, I hope that is changing, but hearing some of his recent stories, there's still people out there that say, it's not good to have muscle. And I don't understand that.
Oh yeah. I don't get it either. I mean, you look at some of the best athletes that are the top of their sport, and they all spend time strength training.
Well, you think about somebody like, if anybody's watched The Last Dance,
right? Yeah.
Michael Jordan was one of the first basketball players. Go look at basketball players pre-1980.
Yes.
They were 7 foot 200.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, you could tell they didn't lift right. They didn't eat right. Michael Jordan was probably one of the first ones to start lifting. But look at somebody like Karl Malone and LeBron James. I guarantee you they're strength training.
Right.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. It's like their shoulders are the size of bowling balls.
Right.
Like,
and what I think too is looking at the different body types in all sports. And I watch, because I'm interested in body types, and I try to make these structure activity relations. In my opinion, and I don't know what the stats are on this. I'd like to do some of the data myself. The ones that actually have the least injuries are the ones that look more muscular. You look at the tall and lanky ones, they're always hurt.
Oh yeah.
They're always hurt. And I don't know what that has to do with anything. It might be bone length and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, it can't hurt.
Right. Yeah. Especially with those taller guys. I mean, just the way their anatomy is and angles is like they're the ones that actually need it the most.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because there's so much leverage on those bones and rolling ankles.
They're at a higher risk than anyone else. Like you are the ones that need to add the extra day.
Yeah. Well, that's really, really interesting. And so you had a really good job at the local city in the city of Moscow, making a good living, getting good benefits. And this is not very many months ago. And Travis comes to me and says, "Can I talk to you?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." He says, "So what, can we have lunch or breakfast?" "Yeah, sure." And he's like, "I'm going to quit my job and become a full-time strength trainer." I'm like, "Cool. That's awesome." And I don't know if he thought I would say, "No, don't do it." Cause that's not me. I'm a go for it guy. And especially when you're passionate about something. And I knew when he had what it took to be an entrepreneur, I'm always going to say, go for it. Cause you never, what is it? They say the pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret weighs tons. Yeah. And so I know I never want to be 80 or 90 years old and say, I wish I would have done that. I never want to do that. So why? And tell me, him and his wife, Haley, she's also a lifter. She's like she competes nationally in powerlifting. I mean, watching her squat and deadlift is incredible, actually.
Stronger than I am.
Yeah, she's really strong. And so how'd that conversation go between you guys? And what did she, how was she about that journey? And just tell me, why'd you finally say, yeah, I'm going to do this?
Yeah. It took me, like I prepped to leave the job. It wasn't just like I woke up one morning and gave my 2 weeks. Yeah. I did wake up one day and I started talking to my close friends, and Haley, I'm like, I'm really thinking about leaving this job.
Yeah.
And Haley, she's great. She's awesome. She's super supportive of everything I do, within reason, I mean, she's like, well, okay, well, what's your plan? And so she's really supportive. She's like, yeah, go for it. And so that's when I picked up the CSCS book, started reading it. And, but the reason I did that is I woke up and I was just like, I do not want to be doing this in 25 years.
Sure. And that's okay.
Yeah. And, and it's like, for some people, if they want to do that, it's great. It's a great position. There's great people there. But I didn't want to look back and be like, okay, what did I do for myself, for the community? And can I take pride in it?
Yeah.
And the answer was no.
Yeah. For you. That's great. And, it's interesting. I get lots of people like Travis. I mean, it's actually probably 1 or 2 lunches a week where people are thinking about starting their own business or being an entrepreneur, or they have an idea in their current business. They want to run it by me. And I'm actually very honest with people, and people have come up to me and they'll say, "Hey, I want to be an entrepreneur." And I'll say, "Okay, what about this, 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 and this?" and they'll give me an answer, and I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't be. And I just didn't have that feeling about you.
Yeah.
I know you're going to make it work. And so how long have you been doing this? A month now? 2 months?
2 months. Yeah.
2 months.
2
And
months.
he came to me a month after, and he's like, Shane, I broke all my goals that I was supposed to the first month in 2 weeks or something. I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah. It went so fast.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, good for you. That's really, really cool. So, one of the things that Travis always saw, and I've actually talked to at least one other trainer about this too, and they're about training the youth and how important it is. You heard how we got hooked when we were youth, and that's how you usually get people hooked on things, is when you're a youth. And that's why I've been training since I was 14, strength training. I won't stop. Yeah. It's like drinking water to me. I mean, it's like, and it's, and I have friends in my life, and it's like, let's see, they know that that's not an option. Oh, Shane's going to the gym today. Yeah. Yes, I am.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
And so, but tell us about, why training youth was important to you, and why, at least right now, that's kind of your emphasis. I know you train many different. So Travis trains my son. He's probably one of his younger clients, is 12. One of my sons is 12. And I know Travis has some guys that are probably pushing 70.
Yeah, Mike just turned 67.
Yeah, that's and Mike, who he trains, and Mike's a friend of mine as well. Yeah. He's deadlifting 400 at age 67.
Yeah, he pulled 405 for 3 on Friday.
Oh my gosh, 405 for a triple. Is he going to compete again?
Yeah, he wants to, but we'll
wow, that's awesome. Yeah. So he could be pushing. A 450-pound deadlift. Yeah. That's awesome.
He's stronger now than he was when he was 7 years ago, because we've been working for 7 years.
And see, listen to that.
Yeah.
Mike is 67, and he's stronger now than he was 70 years ago. Yep. Here's what I also dislike in our society right now. They assume, and I'm not saying we can fight Father Time, but you might as well try as much as you can. Okay, listen to what Travis just said. A 67-year-old is stronger now than he was 7 years ago when he was 60. It is possible. The life of sarcopenia, look it up, where you get weaker as you get older, does not have to happen. It does not have to happen. Strength train, eat right. These things can happen. And there are many success stories out there. I believe that a lot of people just want to make an excuse so they don't have to work as hard. Okay. I'm not saying it's easy. And as you get older, you have to learn how to train around things, and train around injury and recovery and your life and all those things. But that is a great story. And that you're a big part of that, because you don't do that without being a good coach. So good job. Good job. So why tell us about the kids that you're training. Why is that a passion of yours? And tell us about some of your success stories.
Yeah. So, I'll just start, like, when I left the city, the kids weren't the plan, it wasn't the initial plan. But one day I was in the gym, and I realized it was the need.
Yeah, it is.
There is this joke amongst the local gym people. Whenever high school kids come into the gym, they're going to be do something funky or with poor form. And there was a kid in there squatting, and I heard some people making just side remarks about the high school kid that had terrible squat form. And like, I had heard it, I'd been around. Finally, it got to the point it just pissed me off, and I was like, I'm going to do something about this because no one else is.
Yeah, you found a need, you found a niche, and that's what entrepreneurs do.
Yeah, and absolutely. So I talked to the kid. I was like, hey, you're super strong. Your squat looks like crap, but we can make it better, and we can prolong your life in lifting.
Yeah.
And he and I started working together, and he had just graduated high school. And I said, and then, everything was shut down due to COVID.
Yep.
The football team wasn't getting their spring training in. And I asked him, like, hey, are the football players, are they getting any work in? And he's like, no, they can't get into the gym.
Right.
I'm like, well, they can get into our gym.
Yeah.
And so I just ended up throwing out an advertisement, not really thinking much, and it blew up.
Yeah.
And
that's
then
awesome.
The first day came, and I fell in love with it. Yeah. And I was like, this is awesome. And then I started working with other kids, and like, all right, this community needs this. These kids need this strength training, and they need to be taught the right way, like how you and I were. We were lucky. We were fortunate.
Yeah.
And a lot of these kids don't know. And it's, and they have high school weights, but the high school class has 30 kids in it for one teacher, one coach. I mean, it's like recommended at least 3 coaches.
Right. And that's not their main job either. Right.
Yeah.
And then you get a football coach. And I saw this as a wrestling coach too, as I had to train a lot, teach these guys good lifting habits because they'd had bad ones. And so the frustrating part is, but it's not, but it goes to show you where a niche comes in, and you saw that need as an entrepreneur and you said, hey, I'm going to go meet this, is that we have a great weight room in Moscow at Moscow Middle School. We have a great weight room in the high school.
Yeah.
Rarely is it used.
Yeah.
For a whole bunch of different reasons. Therefore, I am glad that you took the initiative and said, hey, there's a need here. Because I know you and I talked about it. It's like parents want their kids to train, but they wanted to do them safely, and they want to learn from it. And that you took the bull by the horns and did that. So that's great. I know both my boys they love training with you, and they love training with the group settings that you have, and so on and so forth. And so I really, really appreciate that. And I think, I've talked about my son's success story on one of my podcasts before, but he had some back issues, and I don't know what his numbers were on Saturday. Did you guys do deadlifts?
We did deadlifts. He went for some pretty ambitious numbers.
Oh, did he really?
I think he had
He
had like 305 on the bar, and his last max was like 285, I think.
Oh, okay.
And it's a mental thing for him. And,
absolutely.
We'll definitely be working. And I explained that to him, like, hey, we're going to get through this, and we're going to get that up there.
Because that's what I was thinking. I'm like, maybe he did 300. Because he weighs about a 150. That's doing twice your body weight.
He probably could have pulled 300, but he jumped up 305, and he tried for it. He kept trying and trying. Like, all right, Scott, you got to walk away.
Well, I know he told me it was a blast. I didn't ask him his numbers, but he said it was fun. So that's awesome. So keep training those kids. Now, you and I have talked about this too. Is that there are literally thousands of trainers out there. It's a big deal nowadays, and there's different trainers for different people and different lifestyles and so on and so forth. And they do a really, really good job. Now, Travis isn't just a trainer, and I've told him this. He's a coach, and there's a big difference. Can you describe what you think is the difference between a coach and a trainer, Travis?
Yeah, a trainer. Someone walks in, pays you, you show them how to work out properly, give them a basic workout. They have great fitness goals, and that's it, relatively. Granted, there's a lot more work and prep work into it. But a coach, once someone walks into the door, you're not just investing into their life, their health, their lifting lifestyle. You're investing into their whole life.
Their health lifestyle.
Their whole lifestyle is like you invest into that kid, that athlete, and you are controlling their weightlifting, their nutrition, basically, and just basically what they have to deal with on a day-to-day. There's so many kids that are going through so many life issues with parents divorced or loss of family member or just being bullied. And there's so much more to it. And as a coach, you need to be willing to invest into helping kids through that mentally in a positive manner.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that really explains it. And that's when I was coaching a lot of wrestlers, that was the same ways. I knew the kids. I knew their siblings. I knew their parents and knew kind of their situations. And it makes a big difference. You're not just coming there to show them technique.
Right.
You invest in their life and their lifestyle. That's what good coaches do. And good coaches will also tell you the truth.
Right.
It's like, yes, this is possible, or you know what, you're not putting in the work, because you've got to be honest with people. And I think people really, really appreciate that. And so you're a great coach. You're a trainer, and you go much above that. You're an actual coach. So that's a really, really cool thing. So keep doing what you're doing and keep inspiring those kids. And I'm selfish towards my own kids, and they just have a great time training with you. Yeah. And so keep doing what you're doing. But I've heard feedback from other parents too.
Yeah.
And that they've actually sent me text messages and saying, hey, Scotty was training, so now my son's training. And I just wanted to say thank you for, inspiring Scotty to train. So now my son trains. That's how it is, right?
Yeah. I got an email midnight before my class started. And from a parent saying, hey, my son was with Scotty and told me all about the class. And I was like,
that's awesome.
Bring him in. Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Awesome.
We'll make room.
Well, he's really loving it. He's really loving it. I think that's great. And so what are you passionate about? What wakes you up in the morning and gets you out of bed? What are you passionate about?
What am I passionate about? My passions change, goals change, but like right now it's like I am passionate about helping the youth in this community learn about proper weightlifting and learn about how proper strength and conditioning can increase their performance. And
That's awesome.
I want them to have a good time doing it.
Yeah.
I want them to fall in love with it and to carry it on with their life. Like that's my passion, is to instill that into those kids.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that is, and I think fun is very, very important, and not just at that age, at every age. I think at every age, most of us aren't going to make a living off training, off of bodybuilding, powerlifting. Very, very few people in the world do, right? So it should be fun. But even if you're making a living at it, it's like when you have a job, so to speak, or a career, when you love it, you're going to do better at it.
Yeah.
And that's how I am. I'm doing exactly what I've ever wanted to do. I'm very passionate about it. And so that's awesome. So what do you think the future of lifting and training is?
Well, currently, I don't think it looks the best. I mean,
really?
Well,
interesting.
It's just like this day and age. I don't know. People are kind of getting a little soft.
Well, go on. Yeah.
And so like a lot of that stuff's not really being encouraged, it seems like. And granted, it could be changing, but like kids aren't being kicked outside to go play. The indoors. There's currently kids are spending their school days sitting at a computer.
You're correct.
And so they're not getting in the weight training. They're not getting in high school weights. And so either it's going to affect that negatively or positively, where parents are like, okay, high school's not doing much. Let's get you signed up with a trainer, and then hopefully something can result from that.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, it's like you were expected. The work ethic was just expected different. I mean, and obviously I'm a different generation than you, Travis. But like recently, this is what I understand. Okay, if I'm wrong, somebody call in or somebody's DM me. Our Moscow Middle School is now not going to have blocking or tackling on our football program. And I told my 12-year-old son this, who's going to be 13 soon. He's going to be in 7th grade. And I told him that, and he didn't know that. And he says, that's stupid. That sounds boring. Yeah. Well, of course it does.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a 13-year-old boy that wants to tackle. They want to hit.
Yeah.
They want to train hard. And that is truly what they want to be competitive. We are wired to be competitive and wired to win. Are you saying our society is saying exactly the opposite of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm not saying the kids are, because I really think it's some of their parents. I mean, granted, all the parents that have signed their kids up with my class, obviously they want their kids to
of course.
Yeah. I'm coaching an 8th grade basketball team. Those kids just want to lift weights.
Yeah.
That's literally all. We just want bench press, coach. It's like, we got to do some deadlifts and other stuff as well, guys. But they want to lift weights. They want to pick heavy things up. But like society is like telling them, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Take the easy way.
I agree. We're going to have some more. Stay tuned, because we're going to have more topics like that. And it's unfortunate, but it's basically the weakening of America and whatever our expectations are. And this is just me and my perception, and we're going to have data that shows this. It's absolutely the weakening of especially boys. And boys don't want that. It doesn't mean boys are better than girls. Doesn't mean girls are better than boys. Boys want to be boys. Boys like to play with hammers. They like to play with balls. They like to throw hard things. They like to wrestle. They like to, do hard things. And so it's not a sexist thing, because girls like to do that too. But we have to push kids and encourage them in a good way, like a coach does, to be as hard as possible. And you're not going to get this from watching a video game. You're not going to. Wii golf is not the same as real golf.
No, it's not even close.
And so anyway, so that's a whole different topic. But we're going to be talking about some of those things on my podcast coming up as well. And so that gets back to kids training. Okay, so I remember when my oldest boy, he's 19 now, and even my daughter, she's 22. When they were about 12, I started introducing them to weights. Of course, they always saw me train, and I had an awesome gym in my basement, so they would see me train, and so then they would watch me. And at about 12, I started, training them and showing them how to do certain things, so on and so forth. And then here were the naysayers. Oh my gosh, you're going to hurt their growth plates. And I'm a scientist, right? So I have a PhD in chemistry. I'm not an MD, okay? But I was just like, that makes no sense to me. Now, remember, when I was 14 and 15 and 16 even, me and my twin brother and I were told by even our football coaches and our biology teachers, weightlifting is bad for you. You will get high blood pressure. It's bad for your bones. Yes, that was 1984, 5, 6, 85, 86. And we're like, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
And oh, it's going to ruin your cardio. No, in fact, you know, one of the best things weight training does, it's actually good for your heart.
Mhm.
Your heart has to pump so much blood when you do a repetition.
Yep.
So what do you say to all that? Like, oh, kids shouldn't be training. Kids shouldn't be weightlifting. I want to hear what are your boundaries? What, you know, how do you train them differently at what ages? And what are your recommendations?
Yeah. So first of all, yes, kids should be training. I'll start
With weights.
With weights.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Granted, you know, the right age range. So the biggest issue with youth strength and conditioning or just youth training is just poor coaching. They get treated like they're little adults and they get progressed too fast.
Yeah.
The coach will get overwhelmed. There'll be a lot of messing around in the weight room, and that's usually when the kid gets hurt, when they're screwing around in class.
Yeah.
Yes, there is a couple of exercises that before puberty kids should not do, such as a box depth jump. It's basically you stand on a box, step off the box, and then jump up. It's kind of a lot of impact on the growth plate.
Interesting.
That's usually that's the biggest one. But I mean, should kids be doing weight bearing exercises? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I train a lot of my young kids like little strongmen because they love little exercises.
Well, you know, you think about this. Let's just think about this historically, you know, and throughout the millennia, right? I mean, so let's just go back 100 years, 50 years, 30 years. I was doing this, but you would work on a farm. You would throw bales, you'd throw bales around, you'd work with horses, you'd work with cows. Let's go back millennia, you know, eons, and you're throwing rocks, you're picking up rocks, you're moving big things. And so I'm just thinking about this logically. It can't be a bad thing, right? And so I've even thought about the whole running and jumping. I want to hear your ideas on this. Obviously, too much repetitive behavior for anyone is bad.
Right.
So why would a box jump on and off a box be bad when kids should be running and jumping anyway?
Right. And it's like the idea behind it is just because the amount of impact, because they could do it, but the box has to be at a certain height. That's that was just the science that was provided to me because I put a lot of research into it.
I can tell you have. I know you read white papers and so on and so forth and publications. And so I would like to hear about that.
Yeah. And so that was the one because it showed that it could have a possibility of injury.
I see.
But honestly, kids are at a higher risk of injuring their growth plate or having an injury while participating in an organized sport.
Yeah. I mean, well, you know what the highest risk of a child is, don't you?
Concussion?
No. Sitting around and doing nothing.
Yes.
Obesity, overweight, high blood pressure. I mean, we're now seeing, you probably see this in our community. We're seeing 12 and 13-year-olds that are 100 pounds overweight.
Yeah.
They're obese. They actually have type 2 diabetes, which used to not happen until you were like 40 and 50 and you treated yourself horribly.
Right.
You know, and so that is the most dangerous thing that you can do. Is nothing. And that's in your whole life, by the way.
Right.
You know, and it's like, so if you think that you're being safe by just sitting on your couch because you don't want to go skydiving, I get it, but that's probably more dangerous by doing nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. And back to the box jump is should kids be jumping and running? Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I have them do ladder drills, single leg box jumps, double leg box jumps, broad leg, or, standing long jumps. I have kids jumping. They need to be jumping and running and sprinting and moving in several different planes of, motion. Yeah. And so that was just that one that popped up when I was reading. I was like, okay, there's some research there. I won't mess around with it too much because there's so many other alternatives.
I agree. And it's probably because kids, obviously, I used to do stupid stuff like you probably did when you were a kid, jumping off roofs and stuff like that. Right. So a box jump but you do that once. A box jump, you're going to do it again and again and again. So it's repetitive. So I get it. And so, but what you talked about age groups, what age groups should kids be in when they start lifting, or is there an age? I mean, what are your recommendations there?
Yeah. I mean, so 3rd to 5th grade, they call it just fundamentals, FUN.
Yeah.
That's when kids should just be playing and being outside and active. And you put them in some sports. Don't get too specific.
Yeah.
You can introduce them to some weight training, but it's not too organized. Just getting them moving and getting them just kind of figure out who they are and how their body works, really. And then about sixth up to like maybe 8th grade, just you're training to train. So that's when you start throwing them into some more specific movements, some strength training and stuff, getting them used to and ready for that next level of training. So when they actually start training for that sport. And then after that, you can start getting a little more specific and a little more organized with your training. It's not so here and there and everywhere. It's more dialed in. And then after that, then you start training for performance once you hit that college level.
Yeah. Okay. Well, those are really good aspects to think about. And so, what are your thoughts? And I don't know if you've studied this enough, and I have my own thoughts on it. Not necessarily science. A lot of it's anecdotal. On even at the high school level of an athlete, male or female, basically focusing on one sport. Whether it be track or wrestling or football. What are your thoughts on that? And is there research on that? I don't even know.
Oh, there is a lot of research on that. I highly recommend for kids to play several different sports, and you should not be having your child specialize in a sport until they are in college, until it's at that level. There's research that shows that athletes, and they did it actually for the NBA. They took a handful of basketball players that suffered ACL injuries.
Interesting. I want to hear this.
Over 75% of them that injured their ACL were specialized sports athletes.
Interesting.
And the other ones played several different sports. Granted, how much relation to that,
but is it a correlation or causation?
Yeah.
I get it.
It's hard to say, but it's like,
because so many people specialize,
right? You're constantly working in the same plane of motion.
I can give you just a little bit of anecdotal evidence that I know, and obviously wrestling is a sport that I'm passionate about, and I know lots of NCAA coaches. Lots of my friends are wrestlers, were former wrestlers, or are coaches now, and what they've seen, because it's probably only been the last 15 or 20 years, 15 years, I would say, where people kind of focus on one sport. It used to be you were like a 2 or 3 sport athlete, right? And now, and I don't, maybe that's what you have to do to put your time in. I just don't know. Is it more healthy? I don't think so. For sure, it's not more healthy as far as biomechanically.
Right.
Okay, I don't think so. But it's interesting how some wrestling recruiters are recruiting kids now, is that they want to see that they've done multiple sports because there's so much more body awareness.
Yes.
If you have one, and so what you would see is they'd see a lot of these kids that had only wrestled their entire lives, and they didn't have as many of the multi-planar movements as somebody that had played baseball and football or soccer or any of some of those things. Now, wasn't Patrick Mahomes?
I was just gonna say Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, he was a 2-sport athlete, right?
3.
Is that right?
He did basketball, played baseball in college, and almost was. I think he was doing tryouts for the MLB. Wow. And I believe his dad was actually a professional baseball player.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. And then of course he went to the NFL, but there was an article about him, and Patrick Mahomes is really good at looking one direction and throwing the other way. And he said he learned a lot of that with basketball.
Oh, of course.
When he would look to try to fake out the defender
Absolutely.
and pass it. And so he attributes a lot of that to what he learned in basketball.
Well, maybe that will start a new trend, because you get somebody that, that's a guy that's easy to follow, that's very popular, like a Patrick Mahomes, and he's easy to look up to.
Right.
Because I just think it's better for the kids if you do have multiple sports in your repertoire.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. That's really interesting. Well, very interesting. So, what about, you talked a little bit about this. And so a lot of kids, I saw this with my wrestling program as well. They have weightlifting classes, even in high school, at several stages, beginner and advanced, for example, yet they don't even know how to do a squat correctly. Right. So what do you think that's attributed to, and how have you been fixing that?
Well, I'll start by saying that I've trained a group of high schoolers, and I currently train a group of eighth graders.
Okay.
The eighth graders, right out of the gate, the eighth graders had so much better form than the high schoolers.
Interesting.
What's different? Well, they're younger, but also they haven't went through high school weights yet.
Yeah. So they didn't get trained improperly.
They didn't get trained improperly, or pick up bad habits from, because I mean, high school, there's a group of them, and throw more weight on, it gets broken.
Right.
Music's up, coach is like counting half reps or whatever.
Right. Right.
And so what's going on is I think these classes have they're too full. There's too many kids in there, and there's not enough coaching. And unfortunately, some of the teachers and coaches, they just don't have that background in weight training, which I'm sure all of them are researching it and trying to improve as much as they can, but it just hits to a certain point.
It takes time.
I left a full-time job to devote my life to this.
Right.
And it's hard to be a teacher, a sports coach, and a weights teacher and a PE teacher. It's tough.
Yeah, no, it definitely is when you have so many other things going on.
Yeah.
No, I definitely agree with that. So what do you think though, as far as, what can the parents do to encourage, not only encourage their kids, but to help their kids to get everything they can do to get them to strength train? Because I think strength training is something, here's the deal. You can't play football all your life. You can't wrestle all your life. You can't do basketball at a competitive level all your life. You just can't. You can strength train your entire life. Will it be different at age 90 than it is at age 12? Absolutely.
Right.
But you can. So what can parents do to really encourage their kids to get that done?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, especially with this day and age right now. But it's, they've really got to sit their kids down and have that serious talk with them, especially if they're interested in getting to that next level of performance, getting to that collegiate level. They really got to be like, okay, who'd you look up to in these sports? With this, is they put in the extra work, they put in the hard work, they did the weight training, they played the other sports, and they drove that extra level. They weren't sitting at home staying inside playing video games. They spent all that extra time weight training. So that they just have to have that serious heart-to-heart talk with their kids. If you want to be the best and be at that next level, you have to put in the work, and it has to go, and it has to go into your strength and conditioning. Well,
I like that mindset. I had some interesting conversations that were actually difficult conversations when I was training some high school level athletes in wrestling and even some younger kids. And there were several parents that came into me and they say, "Hey, we know you're into strength training. We really want our kids to get into strength training." Here was the first question I asked him. Because here's what you said, Travis. You got to get somebody to look up to, right? Who do kids want to look up to the most? It's their parents.
Right. Yeah.
And your parents both trained.
Yep.
Right. Mine didn't, but my wrestling coach did. Right. And that's who got me into it. And so when the parents say, "I want to get my kids into strength training and I want to get into weightlifting," I say, "Do you weightlift?" They say, "Well, no." I say, "Well, then that's the first step. Yeah. You got to start doing it."
Yes.
You've got to be a good example for your kids. I mean, I see a lot of parents that they want their kids to put in the work and the time when they're not putting in the work or the time.
Right.
And so that's
absolutely.
That's a big deal, is make fitness a part of your lifestyle as a parent. Mm-hmm. Fitness and eating right and so on and so forth. And so those are great. That's great. But it's put in the work. That's what you're saying.
That's really what it comes down to, is you got to put in the work. You got to be the example.
Excellent. So that actually leads to, as we start wrapping this up, it leads to, as we all know, as you may know, you see the banner in the background, and the theme is never be outworked. And I've seen some recent posts, and I've been getting some DMs from people, texts from people, all kinds, some other comments on social media that they say that's their new, because of some of the things that I've done. They say that's their new actual mindset. That's their new motto, is never be outworked. I am honored to have that be a part of just if I can inspire one person and one person only, I've met a goal of mine. Okay. So that brings us to, tell us how the never be outworked mindset applies to your life, Travis.
Yeah. I mean, in the field that I'm in, it's shark infested waters, man.
It is. I mean, there's a lot of competition.
There's a lot of competition.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of really good strength and conditioning coaches out there.
Yeah.
And you can be left behind.
Yeah.
I mean, instantly.
Yeah.
If you become complacent, you're done. So I get up at 4:15 every morning. I open up research articles or articles and I start reading to learn.
It's awesome.
Because I
That's
just
awesome.
start grinding. We talked about it. It's like, you like grinding? We'll enjoy it because that's going to be your life.
Absolutely.
And it's, if you're not up trying to better yourself and outwork the competition, someone's out there doing it.
Absolutely. Somebody's going to outwork you.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And that's what drives me is I want to be the best.
You can tell.
I'm competitive.
Absolutely. That's a great mindset.
Yeah. And, some people might be kind of put off by it or whatever, but it's like, no, I put my nose to the grindstone and I go and, you have to be successful.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. That is a great, so you're competitive, and that is a great mindset actually. And competitive is a good mindset to have actually, that you want to win.
Yeah.
I had my bodybuilding coach on last week, and I kind of asked him the same thing. He says, Shane, it's pretty easy for me. I like to win. Like, yeah. Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean win at all costs. It doesn't mean you don't have a heart. You're not empathetic. In fact, you're more empathetic than a lot of people, because think about how much you care about those kids.
Right. And that's winning to me.
Of course it is.
Winning to me is being able to provide something to the youth in this community.
Yes.
Like, so they have something that helps improve them.
And that's the thing. Whatever you define winning as, that's your win.
Right.
That's what's cool about it. You get to define, especially as an entrepreneur, you get to define what your win is and what your goal is, and you can meet that goal. So that's really, really awesome. So, so as we wrap this up, first of all, our last question is always, tell us about one apparent failure that you may have thought was a failure. It wasn't, but because I don't believe in failures, I only believe in learning opportunities. Mm-hmm. And that, or maybe somebody else thought it was a failure, but that caused you more success. Actually, I'll let that sit, because I will ask you probably one final question, but tell us about one of those apparent failures that caused more success for you.
I mean, it was a long road to success, but I got accepted in grad school, and I dropped out within a week.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was, that was probably 5 years ago.
Interesting.
I was overwhelmed. I gave up.
Yeah.
I failed.
Yeah.
I got the homework and I looked and I'm like, I can't do this. I could have done it. I wish I would have, but I'm glad I didn't, because it put me in a direction. It put me into that city position. And at that position, you had to work hard to do well at your job.
Yeah.
And I developed a great work ethic.
Yeah. Sure.
I always had kind of a pretty good work ethic, but like, you better have a good work ethic there or you will get fired.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Snow plowing at 2 a.m. in the morning. And,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Doing irrigation installations at 100-degree weather just down the road from your house.
Right. Exactly.
And so I really learned how to work hard there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then I took what I learned there and applied it to what I'm doing now. And it's proving invaluable.
That's really cool. Now, let me ask you a pretty vulnerable personal question. I want to hear about this, because we're going to be talking about some of this brokenness, because that's what it was. Everybody tends to be broken in life, and it's how we cope. Right. So you talk about when you were in high school and you weighed 280 pounds and you looked at yourself and you actually just kind of hinted towards it, but you kind of, you blamed your dad. You know, because he abandoned you, and of course you don't know the whole story.
Right.
And I get that. That's probably a whole nother conversation. Yeah. So you're like, weightlifting sucks because
he liked it.
Because he liked it, right? Yeah. And so how does that affect you and your dad's relationship today?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, Shane. I don't even know the last time I talked to him.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, he was around here and there, but it was when it was convenient for him.
Is that right? I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's, but that drives me. Like,
I get it.
That really does drive me. And we tried, it just didn't work out. Yeah. And, and then that's why, it really dawned on me, you know what, for these kids to have a role model. Granted, I'm not saying that their parents aren't great role models, but but
kids don't always listen to parents.
Yeah. If I can be that other individual,
that's awesome.
That helps, improve their outlook and just have improved the path to success, whatever. But, and so and I didn't have the best coaches either. I had one really good coach that kind of helped motivate me, but I had bad coaches, and then my dad was in and out and gone. And so I was like, I want to be that person for that kid that may be going through the same thing that I'm going through.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
that's a good mindset to have. And let me just give you my advice, since I'm older and have a little bit of gray hair.
Mhm.
So you don't have to prove anything to anybody that you're worthwhile and that you're worthy. You have a great wife, you have a great life, and you have a great mindset. Keep inspiring kids, and just remember that you have nothing to prove, only to yourself. You don't have to prove his love. You don't have to try to earn it from him. You've tried. You might not ever
Right.
get that back, and
Right.
and that's okay.
Right.
But you have people that care about you in your life. And so, Travis, you're doing an amazing job. I'm so glad to have you on the podcast. And I feel honored to know you as a friend, as a trainer, as a coach, as now a coach of my kids. That's just awesome that they get to leave a legacy as well. And so thank you very much. And thanks, viewers. Thanks. I want to say this again. You're going to hear some really cool stories coming up. Follow me on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. We are over, just the past a little over a month, 120,000 engagements on actual on platforms, on social media platforms. I never thought that would happen. Visit my website at drsneedham.com. You are going to be hearing about more collaborations coming up that I never thought would happen, and it's so cool. Follow me on YouTube channel, on Spotify, on iTunes, on SoundCloud. Just Google search any of those platforms for my podcast, Secrets of Success with Dr. Shane Needham, and you will find them there. And a big shout out to my nephew, Jordan, who is an entrepreneur himself, 18 years old, and he is now doing social media for people and whatnot, totally making his own living on his own. I'm so proud of him. He does all my editing of videos and everything. He does a fantastic job, and he has some really cool ideas that I get to implement because of him that are even going to make our show even better. So thank you very much, Jordan, and keep killing it at life, buddy. So again, join us next time on Secrets of Success podcast with Dr. Shane Needham. I am honored to have had Travis on our program. Travis, we will absolutely talk to you soon. Thanks again.
Yes, thanks, Shane.
Thank you.